We're on Daf Peiches Amud Beis, almost finished with the Amud, and we got up to Omar Mar. So let's see. If you count up from the bottom of page Peiches Amud Beis, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines up from the bottom. Omar Mar, we had brought a brisa earlier about the case of a mixture, meaning after the Korban Pesach was brought, and there were 5 people that brought their Korban Pesach, and they're waiting online to receive the R with an ayin, right, to receive the hides. And lo and behold, one of the hides clearly indicates a mum, which means that one of the 5 karbanos, we don't know which one, unfortunately, was puzzled. It was a balas mum, and there's no ritzui on a balas mum. And the brisa says that once you find this yabeles on one of the hides, then you might have assumed one of these 5 gentlemen who brought a Korban Pesach which was blemished, he certainly needs Pesach Sheni. And the brisa establishes Pturim. All 5 are exempt from Pesach Sheni. Now, you can't say that the Eved there was Ritzui and there was Tzitz, that doesn't apply to a Balas Mum. So one of these 5 gentlemen clearly did not fulfill his mitzvah of the Korban Pesach. And yet the brisa insists that no one of this group of 5 men will be online a month down the line, meaning on the 14th of Iyar, waiting to bring his Korban Pesach Sheni. Upturim milasos Pesach Sheni. So the Gemara asks the obvious question: V'ha'ika chad below nothing. There's one of these 5 gentlemen did not fulfill his mitzvah of Korban Pesach, and what's going to be with him? He needs Pesach Sheni. Now you're telling me he's part of Pesach Sheni. And we don't know which one of the 5 he is. But in this group, we definitely know that there's one person who did not fulfill his mitzvah of Korban Pesach. And you're telling me that none of the 5, 0, will be online for the Pesach Sheni. That one person is getting nixed out. So Gemara says, Mishum Delo Efshar. It's not that we deliberately want to cut him out, but unfortunately, we have no other option. In other words, the Gemara is assuming now in interpreting this brisa that there's no way of engineering it that the one person, again, the unknown, anonymous person, faceless person, will fulfill his mitzvah of Korban Pesach by bringing a Pesach Sheni. Why not? Hechi le'avi. So at this point, the Gemara embarks on an entire investigation. There'll be about, I don't remember exactly how many, 5 or 6 different scenarios. Each one is a suggestion, a recommendation about how to solve this problem. We're in a maze, and we don't know how to find our way out. We know that one of these 5 gentlemen has not fulfilled his mitzvah Korban Pesach, and we will not be able to facilitate his bringing Pesach Sheni. Why not? Leisei kol chad v'chad Pesach. Why don't we have each one of these gentlemen bring his own Korban Pesach, Pesach Sheni? We're in trouble because 4 out of 5 have already fulfilled that mitzvah of Korban Pesach. And if they go ahead and bring a lamb for Pesach Sheni, that lamb is chulin, because there's no Pesach Sheni for someone who fulfilled his mitzvah, Pesach Rishon. The Arba Minayu Avdiluhu. 4 out of the 5 have already brought the Pesach Rishon. Theirs was not a balas mum. And if you're going to bring a Pesach Sheni when you already fulfilled the Pesach Rishon, that's called chulin b'azara. Correct the Gemara. The lesu kula chad Pesach. What are you, stupid? Pardon the expression. There's an obvious solution to this problem. Let them cartel, join together in a partnership, all 5 gentlemen, with one korban Pesach. There's no doubt that the Pesach is kosher. It's not Chulun Bazara. We don't know who the Bailim are. But for Yankel Beryl, like Chapishmai Galia, they know up in heaven that he didn't fulfill his Pesach Rishon. He had Nebuchadnezzar on his korban. He now is bringing a Pesach Sheni. And since we can't identify him, let's require that all 5 join hands together on one Pesach and bring it as a Pesach Sheni. No, it's not going to work. Nimtza Pesach Nechal Shalolim Nuyav. 4 out of 5 of these people, again, we don't know which ones they are not allowed to eat from this korban Pesach. Why? Because they were Yotzei Pesach Rishon. And you can't be manui on a Pesach when you already fulfilled your mitzvah of Pesach. So you're going to have them all join as a register on one korban Pesach. 4 out of 5 of them are excluded from this korban Pesach. They can't eat from the korban Pesach because they were already yotzei the mitzvah of korban Pesach. They cannot even be manui on the korban Pesach. Now, the premise of the Gemara is that you bring a korban Pesach, it has to be eaten. Well, who's going to eat this korban? 4 out of 5 of these people are prohibited from eating this korban because they couldn't have been manui on the korban. If you're not manui on the korban, you're not registered, you can't eat from the korban Pesach. So can we bring a korban which is not going to be eaten?
Why not? You said Echil is not Ma'akev.
That what is not Ma'akev?
You said Achila was not Ma'akev.
Ah, okay, good. Excellent question. We have to figure out how to square this off with the Mandayomer who says, Ein Achila Ma'akeves. But one thing everybody agrees is that you need minui. And here, this minui is not appropriate, is not applicable to 4 out of 5. So if they're not manui, they can't eat from the korban Pesach. And that's an Isur.
Is it Isur to be a Mimana then? What's the difference?
No, he's saying that it's Asur to eat from the korban Pesach. So now you're going to bring a korban Pesach, Shalolim Nuya.
Nobody will eat.
Because the korban is being brought for those who are manui to allow them to eat from the korban Pesach. They can't eat from the korban Pesach because the whole minui is meaningless for them. So the Gemara asks, "Hi, my, I don't get it. You can't find a solution to this problem." Nesi kol chad minayu pischo. I'll solve the problem here of achila, that the korban can be brought limnuya for those who can eat it. Let each one of the 5 bring his own korban Pesach with a t'nai.
What's the t'nai?
That's what we're going to learn now with the t'nai. Nesi kol chad minayu pischo v'nisnei, and let's make a t'nai. V'nema. Each one of the 5 is going to make the following declaration. Edd balmum, if the korban that I brought a month ago was the one that had the yabelas, haidi isi hashta nevi pesach. This will now be a korban pesach. But the edd tam, if I was yotzi already with the first korban pesach, haidi isi hashta nevi shlomim. Let it be a korban shlomim. So mimanavshach, I can eat from this korban. I can eat from this korban b'taras Pesach in event that my first korban was the balas mum. I can eat from this korban in event that my korban was of tam by making it into a shlomim. And we can eat the basar b'taras shlomim. So you're worried about the fact that we're all linking up to one korban. And we cannot eat from that carbon because none of us can say definitely that we were money on this carbon Pesach. How could we be a carbon Pesach? And no one's going to be able to eat from the carbon. Again, if Ein Achila Makevis means that he was right to eat from the carbon Pesach, but he became Tameh. But now you bring a carbon Pesach that no one is right to eat it. It's like bringing a Shaloli Ochla. Remember, we had a Mishnah earlier in Tamid Dishkat that said if you bring a carbon Pesach Shaloli Ochla, it's possible. There are no Ochlim here on this carbon Pesach. The Gemara says, what do you mean? Why not have each one bring his own Pesach with a Tanai? That Vaya, that he was already Yosei carbon Pesach with the Rishon, now he's making it into a carbon Shlamim, and he'll be able to eat it. So he's either eating it, again, I don't know what bracha he's going to make on it, but he's either eating it b'Torah's carbon Pesach, or he's eating it b'Torah's Shlamim, but Mimanavshach, he can eat it. So you're not bringing a carbon that cannot be eaten. It can be eaten. We just don't know which one of these four is eating a carbon Pesach. But the Pesach will be eaten. And by the way, this touches on, it'll come up around the bend. I'm just mentioning it now, the issue of nosar. Because if you're going to bring a carbon that cannot be eaten, then you're forcing kodshim to become nosar. And there's no question that this behema, this seh, or this gedi is kodshim, because one of the five is chayav and carbon pesach. And now you're going to bring kodshim to the base hapsul. You're going to make it into nosar. By virtue of the fact that you brought this carbon, no one can eat the carbon. So Gemara says, let's use the operation of tonight. Now, one question I want to raise with you, but I don't know if we're ready for this yet, is if the Gemara is willing to accept Tanai at this point, the Gemara is going to reject it, but in the Havamina, if there's a Tanai, why do they have to each bring their own karma? Why can't they all join up in one karma, like we said before, and each one of them will make a Tanai? Why do we have to divide it up into 5 karbanos?
How long are you going to eat it for?
Okay, that's going to be the sugya. Hang on, every issue is going to be covered. He says, in the name of Tosfos, not here but elsewhere, in the footnote, he says, "Eich yochel lahasnul shiyash shlamim, harei Pesach korev achar tamid shel ben arbayim," the last carbon of the day, because of the din of Hashlam, as we spent a lot of time in Tamid Ishkat, is the Tamid Shel Ben Arbayim. And the only carbon that we're allowed to bring after the Tamid Shel Ben Arbayim is a Pesach. Shlamim cannot be brought after the Tamid Shel Ben Arbayim. If that be the case, how can they make this tonight? Oh, okay, I was Yotzei in the first Pesach, but let it be Shlamim. What do you mean let it be Shlamim? We're shechting it after the Tamid. We're not allowed to shech the carbon Shlamim after the Tamid. V'kosvu l'taretz, this is the answer of Tosfos in Yoma, she'im nomar she'pesach sheni mutal hakrivo af kodem tamid shel ben arbayim. There's a whole sugya about Pesach Sheni. Does it have the same identical status as a Pesach Rishon is brought after the Tamid? And Korban Pesach Rishon for sure is brought after the Tamid, that we know. And that's because you remember we had drushes from Psukim. We're not sure if those drushes apply to Pesach Sheni. He says the following: how are we going to bring this tonight? That maybe it's Shlomim. He says, Im nomer she Pesach Sheni mutal akrivo af Kodim Tamid Shel Ben Arbayim. According to the Yom, says that as opposed to Pesach Rishon, which has to be brought after the Tamid, Pesach Sheni could be brought, according to this Yom, before the Tamid. Is Shemashe Pesach Karvach HaTamid, fine, we're going to assume the Pesach Nemar Bo Zmano Bi Erev and Gam Zmano Ben Arbayim. That's right. We had an extra word by Erev with regard to Korban Pesach. Is Yeuchar Davar Shenemar Bo Erev U Ben Arbayim U Davar Shelo Nemar Bo El Be'erev El Sheben Arbayim Bilvat. Pesach Sheni Nemar Bo Gak Ben Arbayim. Now he makes it tonight that it's Shlomim. in event that he was already Yotze, and he's going to bring it before the Tamid. If he brings it before the Tamid, a Pesach has to be brought based on this extra possible Erev after the Tamid. And the answer is that we're talking about Pesach Sheni. In Pesach Sheni, you don't have that extra word by Erev, so there's no need to bring the Korban Pesach Sheni at the end of the day after the Tamid Shel Ben Arbayim. So therefore, they can make this Tanai and Iman of Shach. They'll bring this Korban as Pesach Sheni before the Tamid Shel Ben Arbayim and Iman of Shach. If it's a Pesach Sheni, we don't require that the Pesach be brought after the Tamid because it doesn't say Ba'er. And if on the other hand it's a Korban Shlamim, we're bringing the Shlamim before the Korban Tamid. The Gemara says Lo Efshar. It's impossible. Here we turn to Daf Beit Tes Amud Al. Now we have a problem because how do we give the Kohanim Chazav V'Shok? And the halacha is that it says in Vayikra Zayin, V'ayah ha'chazeh la'aron l'bonav es hashok ha'yemin titnu truma l'koim mizivchei shalmechem. So now, on the tzad that it is shlamim, we have an absolute chiyuv to give the chaz of a shok to the kohen so that they can eat the chaz of a shok. And that's explicit in the Torah. Now, if you make a t'nai, then the t'nai says it might be a korban pesach. There's 1 out of 5 chances that it's a korban pesach. A korban pesach could only be eaten l'menuya. And the kohen to whom you're going to give the chaz of a shok because maybe it's shlamim, they're not money on the korban pesach. Baruch Hashem, they were yotzei their chiyuv of korban pesach on the first round, a month earlier. Now, the korban is going to be eaten shalolim nuya. Which part of the korban? The chaz of a shok. In other words, the Gemara is saying that you have an absolute, mutually exclusive contradiction here by making it both Pesach and Shlomim. It can't be both Pesach and Shlomim. You can't wear those two hats at the same time. Because on the one hand, the Pesach could only be eaten Libenuya. On the other hand, a Korban Shlom requires that the Kohen will eat the Chaz V'Shok. And since the Chaz V'Shok has to be eaten by the Kohen, and the Kohen are not Menuyim, they are eating part of a Korban Pesach, Shalolim Nuya. And guess what? You're not allowed to eat Korban Pesach, Shalolim Nuya. If somebody could turn off their, because this I tried it a million times and it just doesn't work for me. It says mute all, but I don't know why it doesn't work for me. I press mute all. I don't know. Whatever it is, that's what it is. I have to read the handbook, the instruction book for Zoom. So now, what do we have here? We have a situation of giving a part of the Korban Pesach to someone who's not money on the Korban Pesach, meaning the Chaz V'Shok is being given to the Kohen B'Torah Shlamim, but the Torah Pesach is Shalolim Nuya. So he quotes the Yavitz here in the footnote. Rav Yaakov Emden. He says, no. We're not worried about Achila Shalolim Nuyov. Ein Itza B'Shumchu Machil Pesach Shalolim Nuyov. Sharei Yochel Liten Es HaChaz V'Shok L'Kohen V'Lomalo She Efshar Lechol Osam Sheyesh Chashash Shem Pesachu. He says the following, that the Isser here is Nosar, not Achila Shalolim Nuya, because we'll notify the Kohen that we're giving you the Chaz V'Shok, but you can't eat the Chaz V'Shok. You have a problem because that Chaz V'Shok might be a Pesach Shalolim Nuya. So we don't have to worry about the Isser Achila here of eating a Korban Pesach Shalolim Nuya because the Kohanim are not going to eat it. But what we do have to worry about is Nosar, because now you're going to leave Basar HaKodesh without Achila. And the law is that this Korban Pesach has to be eaten. They can't eat it. So they're holding on to parts of the Korban Pesach, which automatically become Nosar, and that we're not allowed to do. So the Gemara asks, I have another solution to the problem. Each one of these 5 people are going to bring his Korban Pesach together with a Kohen, and the Kohen is going to be part of the Minui. So if the Kohen is part of the Minui, let's call him Ruvain. Ruvain is Yisrael. He's in this suffix situation. So he invites Aaron HaKohen, right, to join him on his Korban Pesach. So it's Ruvain the Yisrael together with Aaron the Kohen. And now, Mimadavshach, Aaron HaKohen could eat from the Basar Pesach. If it's Pesach, he's Manu. And if it's a Korban Shlomim, then it's Chaz v'Shol. So Gemara says, hey, Chidamim. What do you mean the Kohen is Manu? The Ovid Pesach, he already was Yotzei Yischiv a month ago. He can't be Manu on another Pesach. And Dilma Hai Pesachu, we don't know for sure, but there's a chance that Ruvain's lamb is actually a Korban Pesach because he was the one never who had the Abelis on the first round. So what we're looking at here is a Korban Pesach. This Kohen cannot be money on the Korban Pesach to allow him to eat from the Korban because he already was Yotzei on the first round. Nimtza Pesach Nechal Shalolim Nuya. The Iloka Aviv Pesach. Again, I don't know how you're going to find this Kohen. You're going to have to put out on social media. Will a Kohen who missed the first round, let's say he was Tameh at the time of Yudal Benisam, please show up, answer this call. And then we're going to invite him to partner up on the Korban Pesach of, one of these 5. We'll call him Reuven. Reuven says, don't worry. It's worth it. I'll carry the bill. I'll pay for the lamb. The Gemara says, "Ve'id lo avid Pesach is dilma shlomimu delo avid Pesach." So Gemara says that we have a problem, right? This Kohen is chayav in Pesach Sheni. He did not bring a Pesach Rishon, and he's linking up with Reuven. What are the chances that Reuven's Karban, that this Kohen who needs desperately Pesach Sheni Karban, is actually a Karban Pesach? If I'm not mistaken, it's 20%. 80% tells me that this is not a Karban Pesach, it's a Karban Shlomim, which is fine. I don't mind the Kohen eats the Chaz v'Shog, but now the Kohen is not Yotzei his mitzvah of Karban Pesach. Dilma Shlomim hu ve'lo avid Pesach. The Kohen is not being makar of a Korban Pesach. So it's bad enough that he missed Pesach Rishon, this Joe Cohen, but now he's even missing Pesach Sheni because he volunteered to link up with Reuven to solve Reuven's problem. But yet there's an 80% chance that what the status of this lamb is that of a Shlomim and not a Pesach Sheni. It reminds me of the Gemara says, Ein Adam chote v'lo lo, meaning I don't have to give up my mitzvah for your sake. I got to worry about my obligation. So ein adam chote b'yad chaver. Gemara says, you know what? I have a solution. Neisei kol chamisha. Each of these 5 unknowns, right? The 5 suffix tarovas and all that stuff. Chad Kohen. Let's just find one Kohen on the face of the globe who did not bring Pesach Rishon, below Ovid Pesach. V'nimnei ilove hani chamisha psachim. And now they're going to, each one of these 5, Reuven, Shimon, Levi, is going to invite this one Kohen to join him as a manui on the Pesach. And therefore, what's going to happen is that you can cover all your bases. As far as Shlomim is concerned, the Kohen could eat the chaz v'shok. And as far as fulfilling his own obligation of Pesach Sheni, because the Kohen Delo of it, he didn't bring Pesach Rishon, the Manav Shach he's going to fulfill his chiyuv, because one of the five is certainly a Korban Pesach. So by being money on all five, he certainly will be able to fulfill his mitzvah of Korban Pesach. One of the five gentlemen did not bring his Korban Pesach. And when they invite this Kohen to join, Kanofik Bey. Again, I can't tell you which of the five Korbanos was the Korban Pesach for the sake of this Kohen, so that the Kohen was Yotzi's Chiyuv of Pesach Sheni. But I definitely know that he fulfilled. Yeah, again, I have a bracha child. I don't know which, where he's going to make the bracha. Okay, so now we get back to Alan's point from before. Ella, I'll tell you why we can't bring Pesach and make this tonight. That it should be Shlomim. Mishum, when he makes the Tanai, Komemait biachilas Shlomim. The time allotment for Achila is not identical in Pesach and Shlomim, although there is a period of overlap, because the Korban Pesach could be eaten up until the next morning, or according to Rabbi Lozman, it's till Chatzos. But Shlomim can be eaten for 2 days, not only today, but it can be eaten tomorrow. And now you're being mamayit the achil of Shlomim, because based on this Tanai, you're going to be bound by the limits of Korban Pesach. The Ilu Pesach liyom v'layla, meaning the day of the Hakrova, and then the night following, which is the night of the 15th. The Torah Shlomim gets a second day. And now you're being mamayit, you're excluding that second day by setting up the Shlomim as a Suffolk Pesach with a Tanai, and therefore he's going to have to eat it on the night of the 15th. Now he writes here, this is very important. He says, that since we have to worry that each one of these karbonos might be a Pesach, we're bound by the time limits. If the time period goes by, we're going to have to burn them. You're going to have to burn the Korban Pesach, and it might be Shlomim. As far as the mitzvah of Shlomim is concerned, you have another day to eat the Shlomim, and now you're going in and burning kudshim that have to be eaten.
So eat it all the first night. There's no more, ain't anything left.
So 1 second. Hatam sha'asal emaydes manach chilu mishum sheyesh lochus sheyisru kodshim ksherim. So what are we worried about? Are we worried about the fact that he will not be able to eat it in the same time allotment, which Shlomo gives him an extra day? Second. He's saying the following, that Osur L'mayit Zman Achila. It doesn't mean that he can't eat it and be Yotzei Mimonefshach in the overlap time between Pesach and Shlomim. But it means he's going to be bound to eat it within a shorter period of time than Shlomim normally allows. Now, what's the problem? Okay, so Shlomim allows another day, but he'll eat it tonight. He says, quoting the Mikdash David, Sha Isur Lemait Zman Achila, who Mishum Shu Gorem, we're afraid of a chashash yavo kodjem lidei nosa. Hainu im lo yochlam b'shasha efshar daim li ochlam. So we don't want to cut the amount of time down because it might contribute to creating nosa if he doesn't eat it on time. So in other words, the Torah said with regard to Shlom, we're going to give you another day. So that in an event you didn't eat it on the first day, we'll give you a second day and it won't become nosa. But if I cut out the second day, then I've undermined that allowance that the Torah gave me that in an event I didn't eat it on the first day, I still have the second day to eat it. That allowance no longer applies because this might be a Korban Pesach, which has to be eaten no later than daybreak on the 15th.
Yeah, but give me a break. I mean, this is an emergency, so to speak. Here, so you're waking up about a shash that you might leave no.
No. We're not talking about a chashash d'Rabbanan here. There's a principle called ein mematim zman achila. The reasoning behind that ein mematim is because we're afraid. But that doesn't matter. Forget about the reasoning behind it. The halacha is that we're not mematim zman achila. If you bring a korban, and in addition to being shlamim, it's a suffix Pesach, you have virtually being mematim zman achila, and that we're not allowed to do. And I get the impression that that's a Doraisa Allah. Also, zman achilas hakarban. Again, you ask why. I can give you the logical explanation in the chash that maybe, but that's the din. So the Gemara asks, "V'neisei." We have to wrap it up. V'neisei Mosar Pesach. Why don't they make the following tonight? Each one will bring his own korban and they'll make it tonight. Then if they were already Yotzei with the first Pesach, let this animal be what's called a Mosar Pesach. And Mosar Pesach means an animal that was designated as a korban Pesach. Then it got lost. They brought a replacement korban Pesach. Now they found the original korban Pesach. So after they had already brought the replacement, they found the original, and it has a din of shlomim. Again, exactly how you're going to find this, again, you have to use social media. But you're going to make an announcement. I'm looking for Mosar Pesach. Now, what's the deal with Mosar Pesach? V'nema. Here's the Tanakh. Each one of the five is going to make the Tanakh. EDD Balmum, if I need a korban Pesach, Haidi Isi Hashta Nevi Pesach. Let this one be a korban Pesach, which means that since it was originally designated as a korban Pesach, we don't need it anymore because in the meantime we replaced it with another korban Pesach, but now we do need it. We need it for the sake of Pesach Sheni, in this case of a suffix. The EDD Tamu, and if I was Yotzi already, the Pesach Nevi, Hai the Isi Hashta Shlomim. The halacha is that Mosar Pesach has the status of Shlomim. As a general rule, Mosar Pesach is only Shlomim, but in this weird scenario, the Mosar Pesach could also be a Pesach. The Mosar Pesach Nechal Liyom V'Layla Echad. So as far as the Zman Achil is concerned, this is a Mosar Pesach, and it's limited by the same time period as a Pesach. But on the other hand, it's quite possible that this is a real korban Pesach, and that it could be. So it could be both a korban Pesach and Shlomim. What are you going to tell me? You're going to tell me, wait, how could you be Mamayit Man Achila? I'm not being Mamayit Man Achila because this carbon does have a status already. It has a status of Pesach. It's also a carbon Shlamim. And my Rebbe has a whole essay on the status of Moser Pesach. Save Dinim. It's very complicated. But the point for our simple pshat, just to get by the pshat, is that we're going to take a Moser Pesach that's already been designated as a Pesach, and we're going to use it for the purpose of Pesach Sheni, in this case of a Suf. But the Gemara is going to reject this as well, but that will leave in Mirza Hashem for tomorrow. So let's just make a note of where we got up to. We're here on Daf Pei Tes Amud Aleph on the top of the page, and we're up to V'chi Mafrishin. How many lines down from the top is that? Because I was looking on the other side. I would say about 15 lines down from the top.
Is it
That's
possible that the carbon that my suggestion to eat it all of that night you couldn't do because it has to be eaten ala sova, and if you're really stuffing it into you, that's achila gasa, which is us.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know. Okay then. Thanks. Have a great day, everyone.